Okay, so I think we will turn the mic over to Christian Nunes in just a minute. I will introduce him. Christian has been an active member of our birding community for many years, a couple of decades, I believe. He is employed by the city and county of Boulder as their field ornithologist and biologist, and he has served in CFO in several different capacities, including a member of the Bird Records Committee and also the vice president of the board of directors. So with that, Christian, I welcome you to discuss eBird and planning a big day and other aspects of eBird. So have at it, Christian.
Thanks, Nick. Chuck, I might need you to reassign me as a co-host. Oh no, I still am. Okay, we're all set. 2 years into this, and we still don't know how to use Zoom. Well, thanks for joining me, everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces and names up in the list of participants. This is a great turnout. I really appreciate you all showing up to learn a little bit more about eBird and how eBird could be a useful tool in your big day adventures, be it the Colorado Birding Challenge or eBird's Global Big Day, or just your everyday birding outing. I hope to provide you with a few useful tips and tricks that help me use eBird. It helps me when I've prepared for my own big days. And as a reviewer, and as I go through the data and try to make sure that the data quality that's coming through is appropriate, there are certain things that I look for as a reviewer that really help improve the data quality of all of the eBird checklists coming through. And so let me start sharing my screen. All right, how are we looking? Chuck, you want to give me a thumbs up if that you can see everything? All right. And let me just do a little bit rearranging windows so I can see what's going on. And yeah, please feel free to use the chat if you have any questions during this, and we'll probably answer those at the end, but feel free to be interactive. I'm happy to pause and answer questions or just answer them at the end. Just also one little thing, I do have an 8-month-old baby who is currently eating dinner behind the curtain behind me. So if you guys hear, I hear him coughing right now. So he might start hollering, and but he'll go to bed in a few minutes. So so yeah, big day birding with eBird. I talk about planning your day, how to track during the big day using eBird mobile, and then compiling everything into a trip report. And just a quick quiz here, there's a secret Easter egg hidden in this photo. And if anybody sees what the cool bird is, go ahead and put it in the chat. A little bit of the history of my experience with big days. This is me when I think I must have been getting my first communion or something. So I'm not sure how old I was. I must have been 11 maybe. And this is my bird nest collection, which was my most prized possession as a child. And it all started when I was about 3 years old, and I was at my uncle's house, and I found a yellow warbler nest, which is a beautiful silken nest made of cottonwood fibers or milkweed fibers. And that kind of kicked off a little bit of an obsessive collection thing, passion. So as you can see, I had lots of robin nests, and I grew up in Rhode Island, and we had red-winged blackbird nests and orioles. And just so you know, I was very ethical about my bird nest collection, and I would always just go out in the winter to go collect a nest. I would not be collecting bird eggs or anything like that. And I even entered my nest collection in the county fair and won a ribbon one year for a neat collection, which is, for a little kid, it was pretty thrilling. But then one day I realized that I had to figure out what went with the bird nest, what bird made that bird nest. So I started studying my Peterson guide, and that led me to become a little bird nerd. And by the time I was about 12, I actually started working at the local bird store, selling bird seed and helping people with bird feeders. And through that experience, I met my birding mentor, Dan Finizia, who is one of Rhode Island's top birders. And he took me under his wing when I was a young teenager, 12, 13. And we started going out and doing big days. And so we would go out for about a 2-year period. When I was in high school, we did a big day every single month, trying to set monthly big day records for the state of Rhode Island. So if you can see here, this is actually, I pulled up the 2001 ABA Big Day Report. And so ABA used to publish this and send it in the mail to folks. And so you can see that Rhode Island, these are all the big days that we did that year in 2001. And so doing a big day, it's a very competitive type of birding, but what I want to stress is that it's actually a great way to learn the craft of birding. You are really out there in the field, learning how to observe, really honing your skills to pay attention just a little bit more than you might normally. And so I think that really helped me as an observer, and it helped me kind of broaden just the way I am looking at the environment that I'm in and looking at the habitat. It makes me look a little bit further out, scanning the horizon a little further, scanning that shoreline a little bit more intently, and which to this day I still use in my birding to help me find more species. By the time I was in high school, I started really getting into doing big days, and I actually competed in the World Series of Birding, which is New Jersey Audubon's event that they hold every year. And so I'm there on the right here with my friends. James is actually a Coloradan. And then Chris is a bird tour guide right now, and he just led a grouse tour, a chicken tour a couple weeks ago. And then I even graduated to doing the Great Texas Birding Classic with some of my friends. I don't know if folks know Nick Block, for instance, the center here with the trophy. He's a professor now, and he teaches evolutionary biology. But he offered me the position on the team, and we ended up winning that entire event back in 2002, I think. And so I think I was 17, and I won a Leica telescope as a prize, which I still use today. I was just out an hour ago scanning shorebirds with my Leica telescope that I won way back then. So, kind of as a young person, it was that competitive type of birding that it really got me excited about it and got me to go do some neat things and neat places. And luckily, Louise Zemaitis from New Jersey, who folks might know, she's a very well-known birder. Her and her husband, Michael O'Brien, are kind of two of New Jersey's top birders. She took me aside one time and said, "Christian, doing big days is really fun, but you really need to go to college." So I took that advice and I said, yeah, I'll go to college. So I ended up studying environmental science and biology, and I'm now an ecologist, and I study birds for a living. And I get to make a living while watching birds. So that all worked out. And then, of course, in about the same year, 2002, eBird was launched. And so it really started as a North American database, basically citizen science database. I took this screenshot yesterday. So there are currently 65,900,000 complete checklists. So that's just complete checklist, which is just a traveling checklist or stationary checklist where all the birds were seen. You click that button, says yes, all the birds were seen. And then they sometime last year, I think during last year's big day, global big day that eBird hosts, they passed the 1 billionth observation mark. So the 1 billionth bird observation. So it's now a worldwide citizen science database that is just, I think it's gone so far beyond what people imagined it could be. Even in, when it first started in 2002, it was a niche type program, and then it just grew from there. And it took about 10 years for things to really take off and for eBird to get more of the respect from the global community that it deserved. And so now that people all over the world use it, we just see the amount of data going up exponentially, and just the tools and the data visualizations that we see. I mean, all the maps that they can put together, and really the science that's being published from all this just huge amounts of data is really, really impressive and really good to see. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, that eBird started the Global Big Day back in 2014. And so this was an idea of, you're taking that bit of that competitive idea and putting it out to the world. And so the goal was really to see how many birds could we birders see in a single day. So you just organize everybody and get them out there. And it turns out that it's quite a lot. I think in the 2021 Global Big Day last year, something like 7,884 species were seen, which is about 67% of the world's species. So all 67% of the world's species were seen in a single day by eBirders around the world. So of the almost 11,000 species, so almost 8,000 were seen. So really quite impressive. And then we have the Colorado Birding Challenge. As Nick and Chuck discussed, 2021 is the inaugural birding challenge, and over $35,000 were raised for conservation. Last year, the money went towards the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies and their work protecting grasslands in northern Mexico, which is the wintering ground for many of our breeding species, and a lot of birds that migrate through Colorado. Some of those fun birds that we love to go look for, like Sprague's pipit and Barrett sparrow, they all go winter just in northern Chihuahua and areas that are pretty close to the border. And then also the money went to go fund Modus towers, which is just a technology that's being used to help track migrating birds. It's super helpful. You put up a Modus tower, and anything that flies by that has the appropriate type of tag will get recorded. And so people have been setting up these towers across the country to just detect all these migrating species. And it could be a bird, it could be a bat, all sorts of things. And last year there were 73 teams that covered about, 2/3 of the counties in the state, 44 of the 64 counties, and 281 species were detected. And so this year 2, we'll see how well we can do. So eBird plus the Colorado Birding Challenge equals fame and money, right? How are we going to use eBird to prepare for the Colorado Birding Challenge or Global eBird Big Day or any of your birding outings? And what is the best way to use eBird Mobile during your big day? And how does one create a trip report to compile all of the information that you gathered during your big day? So that is what I'll talk about next. So for the Colorado Birding Challenge, we have some really good information on the CFO webpage. So if you go to cobirds.org, there should be some very easily accessible information, and you can read all about the rules and regularly, how to get yourself registered, how to get onto a team. You don't have to form your own team; you can join another. And really importantly, is to solicit donations and pledges. So often the classic birdathon model is have folks pledge 5 cents, let's say 5 cents a bird, and you go out and you run around all day and you find 130 species, and then you ask that person to do 130 times 5 cents, and that's what they'll write a check for. And then so here's one of the kind of the tricks. My first trick that I'm going to describe today is create a team account. And so in eBird, this isn't going to be your personal account that's linked to your name. It could be Joe Schmo Birder. But you're going to create a unique account, which has to be linked to a unique email address. And that's going to allow you to have latitude on when you're doing research using all the Explore tools. If I use my own account, I have 30 years of data in eBird. If I'm going to be focused on one area, it's actually a hindrance that I have all this information. I'm linked to all these locations, because what I really want to do is learn what is being seen around me or in the geographic area that I choose to go do my birding challenge in. And it really helps to have just a clean slate account. And then also, that's just a nice way at the end to wrap everything up in a trip report that's focused on and shared with your group account. And so you'll need your own email address to associate with the group account. And although it's really nice to have a team account, the really important thing from eBird is that you do not go out in the field and log in on your phone with your group account. You sign in as your team, whatever. You really have to make sure that you're collecting data as you. So as Joe Schmo, Jane Doe, Birder, and then you share your checklist after the fact with your group account or your team account. So that's how it works with you. If you're going out on a CFO field trip or a DFO field trip, that's how it should work, is that individuals are collecting the checklists on their phones. And then after the bird outing, you will then share the checklist with the CFO account, for instance, and then everything will be compiled, because what eBird does not want is you have a bird club that's very busy and prolific, and they go out all the time and they see a ton of birds, and then all of a sudden they're in the top 100 and they're basically in the rankings. They're shown as this uber birder who has so many sightings, when in fact it's a conglomeration of many people's checklists in one place. But in this situation, just creating this type of team account is just a handy way to help prepare for a big day. And especially if you have a team of 4 or 5 people. And then start exploring eBird. So so let's see, the birding challenge is on May, what is it, Nick or Chuck? Sorry, is it May 8th or 9th?
7th.
Okay, sorry. So May 7th. So I think the ticker said is about 12 days away. So you have about 12 days to prepare and to really study up and work on your bird craft and try to get a little bit ahead of the curve. And if you have any of those weak spots, then you can start studying on eBird. If you don't know what a Virginia's warbler sounds like, now's a good time to start listening to some recordings on eBird to help train yourself. And eBird exploring tools, there's so many. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a bit of these with some screenshots and just talk to you a little bit. And then I'm going to switch over to just showing you how to use these things on my browser. And I hope that works for everybody. So we can set alerts. This goes back to having a team account versus personal account, because I have alerts set up for my eBird because I want to know if there's a rare bird that shows up in my local area. But if I'm going to do a big day, well, I don't really need alerts coming in with a ton of detail. I just need to really know if that's a new bird for my county list. That's all I care about. And so that's kind of what going back to well, if I use my personal account, I get too many emails. So setting up this new team account just for the big day, just a few weeks in advance, just to start getting those more in-depth look at things is going to be helpful. The illustrated checklist is just an amazing tool. I use it whenever I'm traveling to anywhere. You can just put in all the parameters, where you're going to go, when you're going to be there, and it'll show you the species that are expected to see, anything from the common stuff to the rare things. And then it'll show you photos, it'll show you sound clips, anything you need to start. So it really is helpful in your planning for any trip. I also like to do the photo or sound quiz. And you can also set that to a geographic area. So I'll often I live in Boulder County, so I'll set it to Boulder County. And I like to do the sound quiz and just test myself. And so you listen to just play a track that somebody's uploaded to eBird, and it'll give you kind of a multiple choice answers, and you have to say, oh, that's a juniper titmouse, and it'll tell you if you're correct or if you're not correct. And it's just a good way to kind of learn. If you're new to eBird, there's always the eBird Essentials course, which is free, and I think it's rather in depth. This is just a screenshot, but if you scroll down, it kind of tells you all the different things that are going to be provided. I just realized you guys are looking at not the full thing. Sorry. That's probably better. Sorry about that. So eBird Essentials this is a great way to, if you're really new to eBird, this is a great way to get all the ins and outs on the very basics. And here's just an example. I made Team Zugenru here. This is my fake, not fake, my fake Big Day account. So I created a team. Zugenru is the German word for, basically it describes migration anxiety in songbirds. When they're getting ready to migrate, they are very fidgety and ready to go. They're ready to fly. And so that's just a great ornithological word. And so here you can see it's a blank slate eBird account. I have 0. I haven't seen any birds. I haven't entered any checklists. And it's just a great place that I will, once I do my big day, I'll populate this with all my checklists. It'll tell me right off the bat how many species I saw, how many checklists, etc. eBird alerts. So this is back to my personal account. We have, this is what I kind of have sent to me every day. And you can set this to be like a daily digest. You can do hourly. So there's a rare bird in Colorado that gets sent to my email pretty quickly. So I get the word that, hey, there's a, what's a rare bird that was seen recently? Let's see. There's a brown pelican at Chatfield. Great. So I get the information in my inbox. And for my local areas, Boulder, Broomfield counties, I kind of want to know what's being seen. And then ABA rarities is actually pretty neat because you get to see all the cool names from stellar sea eagle to blue bunting. Every morning I kind of wake up and I sit in bed and I look at this email from the ABA rarities just to see what's being seen around the country. But for the big day, you are going to choose a county. Let's say you choose, I'm going to use Boulder because that's where I live. It's my example tonight. And you will set up the alert, and just basically, if you will get an email as often as you want about what's being seen. And so it's a good way you set that up beforehand, and it just puts your finger on the pulse of the birds that are being seen. And with a big day, it's not always about rarities. It's actually very, very little about rarities. It's about finding the common breeding birds, and really finding, in May, you're actually really focused on finding things like common goldeneye, bufflehead, a couple shorebirds that might be still passing through. So those kind of common birds that might be lingering. Cackling goose is going to be really good bird on your big day in May. So sometimes you might hear about, oh, there's a cackling goose at, for me, I live right down the street from a little local park, Lou Miller Park. And there's a goose there, a cackling goose that's injured, and it just lives there. And so it's like, that's really good to know for a big day birder, that they can just stop by that park and pick up that cackling goose. And here we are with the screenshot of the illustrated checklist. This is for Boulder County. You can see on the left-hand side all of the things that you can explore, which I'm going to go through in more detail soon. But there are all sorts of things that you can look at more closely. The bar charts are very helpful. They tell you what might be expected at your time frame. You can jump to a certain species. If you are curious about cackling goose, you enter that in. It'll give you more information. And of course, you have photos, sound, and all sorts of different things that you can explore. And here we go. This is the sound quiz, photo and sound quiz. And with this, you can always set it to your geographic location, time of year. And again, it's actually a way, it's very sneaky. It's eBird's way. The Cornell folks, what they like is to get people to rate photos and sound recordings. So you have that 5-star system. And so this is a way for them to get birders to get involved, to actually help. Every time you look at a photo in the quiz, you say, oh, I think that's a northern cardinal. And you click northern cardinal and you say, good job, that's right. And then before you go to the next species, you must rate the photo. You have to give it a star rating. So they force you to give it a star rating before you continue in the quiz, which is just a clever way of getting you to help with their kind of their stats as well. But it's worthwhile because it's kind of fun. You get to, challenge yourself, especially with the bird songs. So I'm going to now discuss, this is going to be a little bit more wordy with the slides here, but as an eBird reviewer, here are some of the things that I like to think about. And as I look through checklists and as I go out eBirding as well. And I tell you what, like, I think everybody gets the feeling that this can be a challenge, to be a really good eBirder can be difficult sometimes. It's a lot of work on your phone, and it's like you want to be birding, you want to be looking at birds. You don't want to have your nose in your phone. It's a way to get away from all that. But sometimes, and as you get used to using the eBird mobile app, you get quicker and it's easier, and you find little tricks. It's actually kind of nice to sometimes just try to keep track of things in your head for a little while before, instead of constantly having your phone out. But anyway, back to the point. The main point is that a checklist, it's really, as what you're doing is, hold on a second, did I? Yeah, okay, I thought so. I skipped over a slide. Okay. A checklist is a scientific sample. And so when we're sampling, that's a scientific term for collecting data. And it's really important to think about it in this type of light. What we're doing as we're walking around the park, we're making a transect. If you're standing on the shore of Chatfield and you're scanning, a large area, you're doing a point count. So it's a stationary point count. A lot of the scientific literature on birds, the point count has been a kind of a mainstay for decades and decades, but it's really difficult to do statistics on these types of things. And so really the term that's used is defending the line. And so having kind of set boundaries of that, how long is that distance? And there's something called distance sampling, which is not what eBird is doing, but we're trying to get as close to it as we can. Certain birds, each individual bird has a probability of detection. So a singing meadowlark, a male meadowlark singing on a fence post is going to be easily detected. A female sitting in the grass might be almost impossible to detect. And so a lot of the equations that are used to make an estimate on a population based on data is based on those probabilities of detection. And so what eBird is trying to do is use a lot of data that's pretty, I guess, I don't want to say, not weak. It's just kind of sparse, or, well, I'm not finding the right word to describe it, but it's not super precise. And so they're trying to use, but what the value is that there is a lot of data. And so statistically over time, when you have a lot of data, that just gives you a lot more ability to make statistical inferences on that. So during a big day, I mean, it sounds like you're going to be running around with your head cut off, going from point A to point B, doing things. It's crazy, but it's totally possible to be doing eBird at the same time. And I've done at least 3 big days in Boulder County over the last 5 years, let's say. And I did them by myself. And I never had a problem using eBird while I did it. But it's because I use eBird every day, and so I'm pretty used to it. But anyway, so again, just try to think about your distance. And so what's really important is that you want to have as many checklists as possible. So more checklists over shorter distances is better than longer checklists. But don't get too hung up on this. You'll hear people say like, and this happens in eBird reviewer discussions, everyday birders, everybody says, oh no, if it checklist is 3 miles or longer, if it's longer than 3 miles, it's trash. It's like, no, it's not true. Some people say it's 5 miles. Some people say it's 15 miles. It's like, no. So the idea is that you basically want to have a checklist that's covering a habitat. If you're walking through a grassland for 10 miles, go for it. Keep one checklist, and you went in a straight line down that way. Great, 10 miles. That as a reviewer to me is not a big deal. But when you get to the end of that 10 miles, stop your checklist, and the 10-mile walk back, don't be recording that distance. So you want a one-way distance. And so you can either do that by stopping. I think I'm going to get into them. Let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, I am. So that is my point there. So shorter is better. More checklists that are shorter is better, but don't fret too much. And then incidental checklists, those are going to cover everything else. So while you're driving, anything you see, kind of just you're talking to folks and you happen to hear a bird fly over, see a bird fly over, well, consider that as incidental. And it's okay, like incidental checklists. I do a lot of incidental checklists. Some people think like those are bad. It's like, no, they're useful. You're detecting that species. So I think it's, and Swanson's hawk on the drive home from work. It's like, well, it's the first of year, so I like to put that down. So yeah, back to my checklist distance. While you're out birding, often what I'll do is if I know I'm going to be going out, hiking out a mile this way, and then I have to hike back to my car, when I'm at the terminus of my hike, I hit stop. In the app, there's a green button at the bottom that says stop. It'll ask you, like, are you sure do you want to keep birding? Do you want to keep tracking, or do you want to stop the track? And you say stop the track. It doesn't close out your checklist. It doesn't do any of that. It just stops the basically the app from tracking you. And so that little map in the background will just be stopped right there. And so then you'll have that one-way distance, and you can walk back, and you can still add birds that are independent. So like, let's say you walked out and you never heard a cardinal, but on your walk back, you heard a cardinal, then you can add that to your checklist still, but you are not tracking that distance. Or you get back to the car and you said, oh, I just went on a 3-mile hike out and back. That was technically only a 1.5-mile transect. So you can sit there and you just click the distance number and do a little math in your head and say, okay, I'll divide 3 by 2, and I've got 1.5. And so you can change that number manually and then submit. If you're running a big day and you're literally running and you don't have time to be doing all this on your phone, you can make a checklist and you don't have to submit it. You just basically hit the X at the top and it'll go into your checklist queue. In the app, it's saved. It doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. It's not deleted. It's just not submitted yet. So you actually have a list of checklists on your phone that are unsubmitted. And so you can just do that and then move on to your next thing. And then the next day when you've had some rest, you can go back in and submit those. My whole life is counting birds. So I really hope that folks try their best to count birds, but it's not always possible, especially if you're doing a big day and it's just hard to keep up with everything. In this case, the letter X is used for a bird that's present but not counted. It's always better to estimate. So even if you were like, oh man, we heard a lot of vesper sparrows in the last hour, and if you think that was 30 vesper sparrows, that's better than putting an X. So if you can estimate it, then please do. Some of the no-nos, and to avoid the wrath of us eBird reviewer meanies, avoid things like tracking, doing a traveling checklist while you're driving. We see this a lot, like the Pawnee grasslands. People just bird by car and drive for like 40 miles. Seeing all the birds? No, that's trash. We do not want that. Sorry, birding from a car is not birding. That's incidental. You cannot hear anything. You're not seeing everything. So please just keep it incidental. If you are on a hike and you see a lot of birds, you're tracking everything, you get back in the car and you drink some water and you start driving to your next stop and you realize, oh no, I didn't say stop the checklist. And all of a sudden you've driven 10 miles and you have this checklist with, a nice hike and then this long drive. You can actually edit that in before you submit it. So you can edit that in the app, which is a really nice feature they added. And it's essentially just a little dragging bar that you drag from the endpoint. You drag it back to where you want it to be, and then you're good. Also, don't create a catch-all day list. That's maybe tempting, especially doing an eBird, a big day. I'm going to show you later how you can download a paper checklist from eBird, and so you can use that as your day list checklist. And also back to kind of using the letter X. Some folks are tempted to use a 1 to denote presence, but it's more appropriate to use an X if there's, if there were 30 Vesper sparrows, but you thought there were maybe about 30. Best thing is to estimate how many there were. Next best thing is to say there were just X, just present. So only use 1 if there was literally, you only saw 1. And then with the flag species, a lot of folks, this time of year especially, it's a little tricky because every week birds are changing, migration's happening. So what was rare last week is now not rare this week. And there are all these things on that edge which get flagged. And it is still super useful to add a brief physical description of the bird, mention some field marks that you're aware of and that you observed. And it could be just 1 or 2 little things. Describe how you counted things. If you said, oh, this is a gross estimate. No, I counted every single one. I just say a 1 by 1 tally. You can just say tally. And to me as a reviewer, I say that person is reporting 250 California gulls. And they say to me, I counted every single one. Okay. Or they said that's an estimate, and that's still fine. That's an estimate. But descriptions like, I saw a bird perched on a fence or on a branch. Tell me what the bird is doing doesn't tell me anything about what that bird is. It could be, like I say here, a sloth, a marmoset. It could be anything. It could be any kind of bird. So please just add, it was a Vesper sparrow. It had white adder tail feathers and a strong eye ring. Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Christian, you've got some questions in the chat window that are relevant to what you were just talking about. Would you like to speak to those now? I can ask them for you. Chuck can read them, Nick can read them, whatever.
Yeah, let me take a look here. I actually had to move that out of the way. I have a very small screen. Okay, cool. I will go over where the sound quiz is in a second.
We've already linked to that.
All right,
the
there it
last
is.
2 comments that are in there.
Okay, so to answer, let's see, this is Fran's question. What about if you hike out and back and do another loop on top of that? So are you saying you hike out like a lollipop, like you hike out to a loop and then head back? You basically want to just try to think about it. I would just say the rule of thumb is just do your best. So if you hike out and it's a mile out to a loop, you hike the loop. Well, kind of when you end that loop, maybe stop it. Or when you get back, just kind of estimate the distance. What we want to do is reduce that distance to as close of a one-way approximation as we can. That makes sense. And there are often situations where it is very confusing. When you're birding, you're not going in a straight line. You are going over here, through this, over this tree, under the bridge, over here. It's you're backtracking a little bit. So just try to do your best. And if you the distance is a little bit too long because you went back and forth over some area, maybe try to cut off a little bit of distance, but don't stress about it too much. Just try not to track huge distances. And if you are hiking for 5-10 miles, do think about breaking that into smaller bits and pieces and doing more checklists. What about data usage allowing eBird to track? And does it drain the battery on your cell? Depending on your cell phone plan, you definitely are using data. You're using whatever it is, cellular data. So that's something to think about. I also definitely recommend keeping your battery charged as much as you can. So during a big day, you're using your battery, you're using data. So it's something to consider. I mean, I don't have an unlimited plan, so this definitely comes into play towards the end of the month sometimes when I'm super busy and I'm doing a lot of eBirding. I definitely think that eBird takes up a bunch of my data. So it's something definitely to consider. All right, is that about it for now? So this is just a quick screenshot of one of my big days back in 2020. And this is the trip report I just created. And so it's pretty amazing how easy trip reports are. They're a new function in eBird, just maybe a few months old. And I tell you what, before this happened, my method of basically tallying what I saw that day was I downloaded the Excel spreadsheet from each checklist, copied and pasted all the records into one sheet, sorted, deleted all the records. Like for, if I saw 15 American robins, well, I have to delete everything but one just to get like, oh, how many bird species did I see? 147, 130. It took me hours after the fact to get to the nitty gritty. I have spreadsheets, I have Word docs of all my plans and my itineraries and tracking how long I spent places. And then eBird made the trip report function. And now it literally takes 30 seconds to make a trip report. And it's all right there. All the checklists, number of species, all your photos, everything. So I'm going to show you guys how to make one of these. So this is actually the end of my slides. Just bear with me here. How to get out of here. And how are we doing on time? Okay, we're not doing great on time. So I'm going to show you a few of the things I talked about, the useful things. I am going to sign in. Everybody can still see this, right?
Yes, we can, Christian.
All right.
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to sign in. I'm actually going to sign out because I want to sign into my team account. There we go. So here we are. This is my team, Zuganru, Zugu. And this is going to be where I'm going to start doing my research. So explore. I've chosen to do a big day in Boulder County. And this page here is going to be where the vast majority of the information is going to be. First, I'll show you that you can do the printable checklist. This is super handy, and making a checklist for a place has always been super difficult. And so this is just a click of a button. There you go. You can do this for a state. You can do it for the country. You could do it for, probably you could do it for the world if you really wanted to. So it really is a quick and easy way to have a checklist right there. For me, I'm on a Mac. I figured out earlier today, I go to File and Export as PDF to make it a PDF that I can then print. Or if I just don't have a printer here at home, so you could also just print this from your browser. But so that's pretty nice. It tells you, how many species there are in Boulder County. And I think this implies year-round all years. You could probably narrow it down to say May if you wanted to. So that if you want to have in the car. Oh, I'm just thinking now, I must have skipped a slide. This program has been a little funky tonight. Did anybody see, I talked about the checklist czar. I wrote about it in a slide. I don't know if you guys saw that slide. I might have passed over it. So one quick bit of advice. If you have a team of 4 people, have a driver and have the checklist czar. Have somebody assigned to be the checklist person all day. They're going to be the one that's in charge. And that might be hard if you like to eBird a lot, but discuss it with your group beforehand and say, who's going to be that person we're going to put in charge, because they're going to be responsible for sharing the checklist after the fact with all the participants plus the team account. They're going to be responsible for making sure that the data is collected in a good way. And so it's just easier to assign somebody when you're doing a big day, or if you're on a field trip with, say, DFO or CFO, really just have that one person that's assigned as the official checklist person. Okay, so back to our eBird platform here. It's really nice. You can just go to your needs alerts. This is like, you'll see in a second on internet. This is, again, my blank account. So from this county, Boulder County, which for me, I've lived here for 17, 18 years. I've seen so many birds in Boulder, so I don't need anything. Like very, very few birds show up as I need to see this. But now that I'm a fresh account, it's as if I've seen nothing. And it shows me everything that's been seen in the last 7 days. And it's so nice. Everything is put in a nice little bin. I can say, show me the details if I want to see photos, or if people upload sound recordings, the comments, the notes that folks write in. And this is all birds. So Canada goose, wood duck. Again, with a big day, you're not always looking for the rarities. You were looking for the common things. And a wood duck on a big day, like that's a tough bird. Like you have to really kind of work on it in May, because most of the time they're nesting. So you might only find a male because half the population is hiding in a nest somewhere. And so it's good to see, okay, people are seeing about Walden Ponds, maybe I'll go there. And so you kind of start seeing where the birds are, and it helps you plan your itinerary and your plan of attack. And so those are our needs. And then I can click the green subscribe to the alert, and this will just subscribe me to the email alert. And so I'll get an email on an hourly. So I'm now subscribed. And it's telling me it's going to send me daily alerts. I can say change this to hourly if I really want to. And then I'll be getting all that information sent to my email address on an hourly basis. Check out the target species. Again, we're in Boulder County year-round. We can change this to the birding challenges in May. So I'll change those fields to May. Show me those targets. Kind of, it whittled it down from 417 species to 338. And it starts with the most commonly reported species on all checklists. So 65% of checklists have an American robin reported. And so it kind of starts with the most common to the least common. And so you start to get an idea of like, oh, okay, you know what, finding a mountain bluebird, that's going to be a little tricky. And maybe I want to look at the map and say, hey, where are people seeing mountain bluebird? Oh, they're seeing them in the foothills or in the mountains. Okay, like let's think about, and of course the maps, these are all blue dots, which means no mountain bluebirds have been seen in the last 30 days. This is, oh, sorry, I set it to May. So if we were looking at this year in April, we'd see more red dots because people are obviously seeing mountain bluebirds. But still, as May 1st rolls around, all of a sudden you'd start seeing red dots, if that makes sense. I just have it filtered differently. Let's see, I'm trying to look at the chat right now. How does one call up a prior trip list for location one birds frequently to use that? Like a checklist from a location? Can you maybe clarify? So yeah, these are our targets, and you can start exploring there. The illustrated checklist is obviously it's a really super good place to go. Let's see. Yeah, so in here, I will show you that in just a moment, Susan. So just quickly at the illustrated checklist, this is for Boulder County. You can see all the different species of photos, how many species have audio. And this might be a good way to start, you can narrow it down to everything with audio if you want to start practicing. And you can see that each species has some audio. And this is the number of recordings that there might be more available. So this brings you to like, yeah, you can listen to wood ducks. And you can see all these filters: Boulder, Colorado, wood duck, audio. And there are more filters if you wanted to do something like if it's a species that you just wanted to listen to the male song instead of all the different calls, you could filter it down to that. So perhaps, Susan, what you're asking is about like hotspots. So if I bring up the hotspot map, I'm going to zoom in. Walden Ponds is a very popular spot in Boulder. And I'm going to view the details for this one hotspot. And now this tells me all the sightings. The last seen, it's kind of automatically set. So this is the most recent today, April 24th. Catherine was out birding, and this is what she saw. And as you scroll down, you can see, okay, Jory was also out, and these are the species that they saw. Here are the photos that were taken at that location recently. So, oh, look, a Swainson's hawk, great. They've arrived. Great horned owl, robin, so you can start to explore those spots. So once you have your itinerary down, you can say, okay, what's going on at Walden? And the day is coming up to my big day. Is there anything I need to know about? And so in scouting is really important that you get out birding now to start exploring these places on the ground if you can. Does that answer your question, Susan? And that might be another point I can make, is that using hotspots is very, very helpful. I'm not always great about it. I just bird in a lot of different places and there aren't always a hotspot. So do not feel bad about creating a new personal location when you're eBirding. But if there is a nearby hotspot, try to use it. And like be pretty broad. Like the hotspot could be kind of far away, just depending, like if the habitat is the same. If you're birding at someplace like Chatfield Reservoir, that's such a huge area that the point itself is actually kind of far away from any point you're going to be birding, because often those hotspot points are put in the center of a lake. And of course at Chatfield, you got to be careful which county you're in, but just be aware that the closest recommended place might not be that hotspot. So you just kind of take a look. They'll say, hey, look, you should look at these spots and think, is this one I should pick? And kind of think about it and try to use the hotspot if you can, especially at a popular birding spot. Let's see. And rare bird alert. So this is now we're talking about, these are the species that have been flagged by the eBird filters. So cackling goose, honestly, as a reviewer, cackling goose to me in late April, not rare. I confirm these pretty much. People are very good about putting notes in. I'm going to show the details. I think most people have put notes on these, as you can see, just describing the size difference, for instance, and the shape of the bill. And it would be another like week or so before I really start getting like, I'm skeptical, because I think most birders around Colorado know cackling goose pretty well. So you can see now the rare birds that are being reported, where they're being seen. And so this is kind of nice that you get that kind of rare bird alert. And you can also subscribe to this. So you'll get a daily or hourly email with any rare bird that is being seen. I would say leave it as daily. Personally, I just, getting hourly emails, you get a lot. So being daily and maybe the day of, you can set that to, if you think about it, set it to hourly. So there might be some rules out there of like getting information on the fly during your big day might be a no-no. Like you shouldn't be looking at the rare bird alert. I'm not sure. I haven't actually read all of the most recent rules and regulations about big days, but well, okay. Thank you, Deb, because that's my next thing to talk about. We are going to create. Okay, so I've gone through a lot of the tools that we can use. I'm going to now create a trip report for a big day. Yes, so I'm signing out of my team account. Goodbye. That was where that's what I used to explore and to learn. And now I'm going to sign in on my personal account, which has a lot more information in it. So 0 checklists to, 4,500 checklists. So this is my lifelong work right here. And so I'm going to go to my eBird. And on the left here, there's an option for trip reports. And here are some trip reports I've made. One to Puerto Rico and a couple of big days. So May 9th, 2020. I'm going to click into this here first just to show you, and then I'm going to go through the steps on how I made this. So here it shows you a beautiful map of all the places I've visited. This is all really secret information for all you Boulder County people out there. So I'm going to just try to psych you out here. You can't see where I went. But yeah, I saw 147 species back in when I did the big day on the eBird Global Big Day in 2020, which is the best I've done personally in Boulder County. That was 37 checklists. I did add a little bit of media. I do a lot of recording with my phone, and I can say show all details here, and it'll think a little bit. You can see like these are all the places I saw Canada goose. Look at that, I did find a wood duck. Good job, I'm glad. So if I were to scroll down, eventually I'd find those records where I had audio recordings and things like that. But one ringneck duck, that's a great find on a big day. So this is I already created. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to show you how I created it. So again, I'll just go back one more. It's too smart. My eBird trip reports. I'm going to create a trip report. I'm just going to recreate May 9th. Give it a little name. Unfortunately, this tool here, their whole calendar system, you want to be able to change it to 2020 in May. It doesn't actually work. So bear with me as I click back in time, month by month. Oh boy, too far. Okay, May 9th, 2020. End date, May 9th, 2020. So it already has the time set as 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. You have to choose who could see this. Limited would be just me, the owner. Link only would be anybody with the link. Public would be anyone. So I'm going to set it to public for now. And this is what you probably want to do if you're doing the Colorado Birding Challenge. You want it to be public so that you can send it to, or link only. You can send the link to CFO so they want to compile what everybody saw. And then click Create Trip Report. Uh-oh. I should have tried this earlier. It says, nope, you already have one. So I'm going to delete this real quick. Bear with me. Okay, one more second here. Oh boy. 9th, 2020. Public, create. There. It gives you an option to, all the checklists from the day are included. They're selected, and I know I'm not going to remove any, but if you, for some reason, needed to remove something, you could unclick it. Now I'm going to save and view. And that's it. It's done. So pretty easy. It just compiled all 37 checklists from that single day. And so this is the same thing we saw before. And you can add a narrative. You can say, I was with these people. You can share it with folks and do with it as you wish. So I think that's about it. And it's now 8:15. So that gives us a little time for questions if people want to ask some questions. Because I just talked for like a while. I talked on my computer, and I assume there are 50 people watching that.
Christian.
Yeah.
Nick, so maybe make the point also that trip reports can include multiple people.
Yep, exactly. You can share it with the folks in your party. I guess that's, let's see.
So, and that is the way
Yeah.
the teams will report their results.
Yeah.
Is by having a trip report with everybody in their team.
I apologize. I've never done a trip report where I had other people with me. So it's just been me solo birding. So there must be a way. Yeah, add people. Here we go. Edit, add people. And here I'd write, let's see, how do you spell Quetzal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for Nick's email, but he's somewhere in here. Or here we go, CFO Birds. And so that I'd share it with CFO Birds. But I'm not going to share this one. Yeah.
So this is also an opportunity to ask any question about the Colorado Birding Challenge, how to sign up, things like that. Which counties need teams?
Absolutely. Or any questions about eBird anybody would have and reviewing, anything like that. Thanks for posting those links, Brian.
So Christian, there's multiple questions coming in the chat window if you want to take a look there. Start with
Okay.
Debbie Karstensen, or maybe that's for Nick even.
So Deb asks if flyovers count. Yes. Any and all flyovers count on any checklist, I would say. There is even, I think they have flyover in the breeding codes, which is a little weird. There's certain scenarios where actually it's useful to know that a bird is flying over. When I do bird monitoring for the city of Boulder, we actually have to really note that because a cormorant flying over isn't using the habitat that we might be trying to manage. So if I'm serving a hayfield for bobolinks and a cormorant flies over, I'm very, it's nice to know a cormorant was in the area, but that cormorant doesn't live and breed in that field. So I do note that. But for eBird, yeah, it just takes all that information. eBird is such a broader view of the bird life. It's much more of a regional view than, say, a particular spot on the ground.
Deb also asked, says it's unclear how to create a team report on eBird. Do you have to have a new email to create a team report?
I have the great privilege of having like 5 email addresses. So for me, it was very easy to make a new account with a different email address not associated to my personal account. So I used my Outlook account for my personal, I used my Gmail account for this new one for tonight's program. And it takes just a minute to set up. You just, when you go to eBird and you're not signed in, it says right at the top, create an account. You just click that and follow the steps. And it's very easy. But if you only have one email address and you already have an eBird account set up, I think that might be a hindrance and you might have to get a second email address, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But maybe if you're on a team, talk to your teammates and say, hey, does anybody have, anybody else want to set this team account up and name it, we'll name it whatever name you guys choose. And that will be what you share all your checklists to, if that makes sense. So yeah, it is a little tricky. You do need a new email.
So let me ask for clarification on that. That would imply that my understanding was the team report, the team account was for researching, but the checklists would be kept under an individual account. Is that the intent?
Yes, and then you share all of your checklists with the team account at the end. And then I would say you would make your trip report using your team account. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So then it says, Team Zuganru, here's their trip report. So that it looks like that's the team's trip report. Their big day saw 147 species as a team. So, right, you create an account. It's really nice to have that empty shell for the research. When you're actually doing your big day on your phone, you're going to use your own personal account. The checklist czar that you have assigned will have to share each of those checklists, which is very easy to do on a computer. I kind of recommend just waiting till the next morning, get some rest, and then somebody has to log on and share the checklists with all their teammates and include the team account as a teammate. And then
for the trip report, you don't actually have to have an alternative team account because you just name the trip report like your team.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And that's totally fine. You can just do it through your personal account because you have all those checklists. There are a few ways to kind of go about it, and but if you want to make your own team account and make trip reports through that, that's totally legit. I actually asked eBird Central about it, and they said, yeah, that's fine. People do it all the time.
All right.
Peggy asks, if you're doing a point count, what is the appropriate time to count in one spot? There is a standard of 3 minutes. Go ahead and do 1 minute if you need to. I mean, I think a 1 minute count, if you're actually standing there paying attention for 1 minute, that's okay. 3 minutes is probably ideal at the minimum, but at least I'm not going through looking for checklists where somebody did a stationary count for less than 3 minutes. That's not what anybody spends their time doing. So I think that it's still valuable if you are standing, and I do it all the time. This year, I'm trying to do the checklist a day challenge. So I will sometimes remember like, oh no, I haven't done a checklist today. I've been inside on my computer. So I'll step out my door right here and stand there for a couple minutes and just have a checklist, a stationary checklist. But if you're doing something for scientific reasons, like a lot of like bird conservancy folks, they do have a lot of standardized protocols. I think their point counts might be 5 or 8 minutes. I think at the city of Boulder, we do 10-minute counts, but we actually separate the time bins every 2 minutes. We kind of put data in a different row because then we can actually share our data with Bird Conservancy because they do a different time. Let's see.
So would it need to be a 5-minute account point count in order to move it from being incidental to stationary? I think eBird likes 5 minutes for stationary.
eBird, they say this, and there are just recommendations. They don't have hard and fast rules. And I want to say even they recommend like 3 minutes, but so maybe I'm wrong. That's fine. We can look into the eBird protocols a little bit more closely on stationary counts, but to me, a snapshot in time of a minute and there are 3 birds, like that's fine. I've seen this, and that we have a reviewer kind of discussion board, and there's certain people who are kind of data wonks and they get all kind of worked up about these little ins and outs. And to me, I'm like, no, you stood there for a minute and you saw 3 birds. That's fine. You saw 3 birds in a minute. That's some data. You know, maybe having 3 minutes or 5 minutes is preferable, but it's not. You will not get your data thrown out because you stood there for just 1 minute. It's totally acceptable to do a 1 minute stationary count. Yeah.
So with regards to that, the mobile apps will automatically set your checklist to incidental if it is less than 3 minutes. And you can switch it over. If it is less than 3 minutes, you can switch it over to a stationary checklist by clicking on, I think it'll say incidental and it'll have a little drop down arrow. And if you click on that, you can change it to stationary. So that's the way to do it, to get around the protocols that are set in the apps themselves.
That's interesting, Brian, because I usually do longer than a minute. You know, I try to do a few minutes of a stationary count, but I definitely have done 1 minute counts before, and I feel like it was just stationary, and I don't feel like I had to go through that step of changing it from incidental to stationary. But maybe I did. I just don't remember. So, but yeah, if you're standing somewhere paying attention to birds, I mean, that's my stationary count. Today I spent 55 minutes at Lockerman Reservoir in Boulder County, and I did technically walk 0.21 miles. That's what it tracked me as. You know, I moved around the parking lot essentially to the, you know, went to the gazebo where I could stand there and look at the birds. But I then changed that to a stationary count because I wasn't, I mean, I walked a few, you know, a couple yards, but really I was standing looking at a lake with my telescope for 55 minutes is what I was doing. So. See, Denise asks, if you add people to the trip report, then they can download their checklist to the group trip report.
Yeah.
I think you want to have everybody share their checklists first, then create the trip report. Does that make sense? Or Nick, you have some input?
So what happens with the group trip report is anybody in the group that submitted a checklist, their checklist gets added to the trip report. So if it's only one person doing all the checklists, it won't make a difference.
Yeah. And what folks could do, so you're going to have the person that's doing all, let's say you guys could do it how you like. Also, I'm recommending having one person do it on your team. But if you have a different way you want to do it, that's fine. But you'll have all the checklists. That person is responsible for sharing the checklist with everybody. So let's say you run the big day on a Saturday. Sunday morning, Joe shares all the checklists with the participants. Sunday at lunch, you get the chance to go back through your camera or your phone recorder and you upload all your media to the checklist. So you can go in and say, oh, we were at the spot and Joe saw a swallowtail kite, but I missed it. So you can remove that from your checklist. So you can kind of add media, add or remove species if you need to those checklists and get everything tightened up and then make the trip report. And I think that if you did this after the fact, say Joe went in and just made the trip report and you added a photo later, I think that'll show up later on the trip report.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you have until 11 o'clock the next night to submit your trip report.
There you go. Yeah.
So that's to give the people in the photo audio category time to download all their photos and audios.
Nice. That's a lot of work sometimes. So. All right. seeing no more questions and seeing that it's 8:30. Thank you all for your time.
And thank you, Christian. Great talk. eBird's a fantastic tool and should make the big day on May 7th a lot more fun.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in my email address here. Anybody wants to ever reach out for a question, eBird question, ask, you can reach out to me. You can email CFO. They have kind of just a general email address for questions. And then Nick, can you tell us what that email address for Colorado Birding Challenge questions is?
The helpline for Colorado Birding Challenge is cobc@cobirds.org.
There it is. So if you have questions specifically about the Colorado Birding Challenge, that's where to send those.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, Christian.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody, and have a lovely night and happy birding.